You're listening to Being LUCA podcast, Season 2, Episode 1. Welcome to Being LUCA podcast. I'm your host, Layla, and this podcast is intended to inspire, empower, and provide practical tools to raise your awareness and elevate your consciousness so that you can embody your highest self and live your ideal life. Welcome everyone to Season 2 and Episode 1 of Being LUCA podcast. You might notice that the name of the podcast has changed from the previous season, and that's because those episodes were originally recorded a couple years ago. And now that I have more clarity around my mission and vision for Being LUCA, it just made sense to keep the name consistent, and that is what that is about. Today's episode is very near and dear to my heart because it is with one of my dear soul sisters and friends, Didi Tonev, and I am really excited for you to listen to this episode. So before we dive into the episode, I would like to introduce you to Didi so you can get to know her a bit more. So Didi Tonev is an educator, psychologist, author, and speaker on a mission to help people reconnect with their inner wisdom and live a more present life. She's the author of 100 Days to a More Aware You, a thought-provoking and insightful book for anyone seeking to cultivate greater awareness and free themselves from the limitations of beliefs and patterns that no longer serve them. This beautifully crafted book serves as a guide for reflection, offering practical advice for achieving a deeper sense of self-awareness and connection to your inner wisdom, inspiring you to live a more joyful life. Didi is also the founder of a leading Montessori school based in London, England, where she provides children with a supportive and nurturing environment to grow and learn. Through her YouTube channel, formerly known as Smart Parent Stories, Didi has served parents looking to raise their children more consciously. Her channel has been featured in the top 10 channels on growth mindset. Before embarking on her career as an educator and author, Didi spent years working in senior finance roles across Europe, overseeing large regions spanning over 40 countries. Her experience in the corporate world has given her a unique perspective on the importance of mindfulness and self-awareness in every aspect of life. This is a good episode, you guys. I really hope that you enjoy it. And most importantly, Didi is full of so much wisdom and lived direct experiences that she so generously shares. So grab a beverage of your choice and a notebook because you might want to take a couple notes. And I intend for this podcast to be as practical as possible. So I encourage you to, as you listen, if something sparks within you, if something resonates within you, make a note somewhere, because writing things down, it just adds that extra little step to help you remember and integrate and actually be able to apply something that resonates with you to your daily life. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode with Didi. Well, hi Didi, and welcome to you're the first guest actually of Season 2 of Being LUCA podcast. So this is very special, and I'm very glad that it's you, and we're starting with this very important topic because truly I think on this path to back home, to remember who we are, right? I think it all starts with awareness, and your beautiful book, I should have grabbed it. I have it, and there you are. Beautiful musings that you shared, and it was such a special, I remember us sitting in the coffee shop and you saying, I feel like I'm going to do this for 100 days, and
And there you are, you've gone through the process, you've shared your heart and such beautiful stories, and you put this gorgeous coffee, do you call it like a coffee table book? Kind of,
More
right?
like a
Or
reflection book, bedtime
reflection,
table book.
bedtime. Yeah, I like that better. Yeah. So you kind of go deeper within, and you've created this beautiful, beautiful offering to humanity of your heart. And so I think it's very fitting that we start with awareness. But before we talk about the project, I would love to hear more of your story, because I actually personally, I know bits and pieces of your story, but I don't know like the actual timeline of your transformation and your journey, because a couple of years ago, you were a very different version of Didi than you are today. So I would love to hear more of that, if you don't mind sharing.
Of course. And thank you, Leila, for having me. I didn't know I was your first guest, but I'm very excited for you and for starting this podcast, Divine Conversations. And literally, when I realized that you are starting the podcast, I was, yes, finally, Leila is doing something which I know you impact so many people through the work that you are doing, and it comes from your heart. And I'm just literally very grateful to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
before I start with the my journey, I forgot about our little conversation, which wasn't little at all, when we were having breakfast in Lisbon in this cafeteria. And I was brainstorming with you. I was saying, I just feel called to maybe do something which can be helpful for so many people, because it's been helpful to me. And I've been living from, at the time specifically, from such a place of grace and joy, let's put it that way, and peace. I thought, what better gift to myself and to the world than sharing that message? And now I remember we were chatting and you said, go ahead. And literally in the evening, I created this reel and I started the
That's right.
100 days of journey. So yes, thank you for reminding me that. It's such a special
Yeah.
topic. So yeah, my journey, oh man, it's, where do you even start? Um, it's like, it asks you to reflect back on your life, right? In a certain way. So I was born in a small country in Eastern Europe called Bulgaria. And when I was born, Bulgaria was still under the communist regime. So, I was 11 when the changes happened and we finally left this regime, communist regime. But I grew up with that, meaning that basically everything around you is the same. You're not encouraged to be different. You're encouraged to melt with everybody else. Everybody would have uniform. You kind of see your path where you're going to. You have 2 holidays a year. So there aren't many opportunities for expansion, let's put it that way. So kind of you grow up in an environment where there is no variety and certainly there is no freedom. So that was my first 11, 12 years of my life. And then during my teenage years, of course, it was very turbulent time, because after the changes, I literally feel the pain for my parents, what they had to go through, because they lived their whole life under a system that is no longer available to them. So they had to learn so many new skills, and they had teenager daughters at the time. So my teenage years, I was very much interested in psychology somehow, psychology and philosophy. And I never looked at school as something that is bothersome or something that really deserves much of my attention. I liked going to school just because all my friends were there. But I developed this interest towards psychology and philosophy and ethics. And at the time, that was not something which was popular in Bulgaria. I remember my first choice for university degree was psychology. And my dad said, what exactly is this? What do you think you're going to do? Because it didn't exist in our country. If you had some issues or some mental problems, usually you would just go and talk to your friends over coffee. And you're not supposed to express your feelings. When you grow up under this system, you are basically taught over and over again, get over it. And,
Wow.
feelings
Stuff it
are
in.
important, suppress everything. So I remember I loved it so much and I read about it. And when I was growing up, we never had the idea of setting up goals and even intentions. It's just everything was so kind of planned up planned for you that you don't actually have to sit down and think, where am I going? What's my life going to look like? So I never sat down saying, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to develop. These are the field of work I want to do. I just knew that I'm interested in psychology at the moment. I loved math as well. I was interested in finance, but I was interested in becoming a lawyer as well. So all these things that at the time were becoming popular. So I studied psychology and then I studied finance. And I thought that my job line of work forever would be as a psychologist. I thought I would be a clinical psychologist, an organizational psychologist. However, the first job, I started working when I was 3 years in university, already worked for an Italian company because I just wanted to be more independent and make my own money. And that's the best decision I took in my life, because it's really important to actually experience real life work versus just going to school and learning there. And I applied for a job which was supposed to be organizational psychology job, kind of an HR. And the company that took me was insurance broker at the time, American insurance broker, and just starting to develop. And they said, we're going to open this branch in a few months, so it's good that you have you handy here. And they took me as an administrative role. So there were only 7 people in the office at the time. I started, and I was really good at what I was doing, because I used to be the person who would volunteer. So if you give me a problem, I would be the first one. I'll put it on my plate. I can resolve it. So suddenly it turned out this HR company is not coming, and that my skills that I can use are not the psychology skills, but finance. So suddenly my career shifted from what I thought I would be doing to what I surrendered to what life gave me, right? And I really enjoyed it. And a year and a half into the job, when we grew significantly from 7 people, then to 15, then to 50 people. So a year later, I was appointed with a lot of faith from my CEO at the time as the chief financial officer of the company, which was a very big role for 23-something years old person at the time. So I loved my season there, because it was very hard, very much hard work, lots of hassling, figuring things out as you go. But at the same time, I was so eager to learn and very much interested in, like a little sponge absorbing all this information. Plus, I loved my team. I loved office environment. I traveled a lot around Eastern Europe at the time. Year 2 in my job, they appointed me as a deputy CFO for the region, which means that I had responsibilities for 8 countries. And then 3-4 years into the job, my boss, my finance boss from the UK, came and said, listen, we see that you kind of reached the ceiling here, and we'd love to have you in our office in the UK if you feel like it's the time for you to go. And I never thought about leaving Bulgaria. I never, there are so many people who escape their own country in search for a better place to live. For me, that wasn't the case. I had it all. My salary for a month was my mom's yearly salary. So literally, I was living in an abundant life in an early age. Of course, expenses grow because you live your life. I was playing hard and working hard. But I just didn't think there was a different path. And when he suggested that, I said, wow, of course I'll go to the UK. I remember my boss at the time, my CEO, he said, I don't understand what you're doing, because you're kind of, was this me? I'm so sorry, because I switched off everything. But he said, you're like number 1 here, and you're going to be number 1,000 in the big office in the UK. And they said, I never thought it, because it's a big thing, like you're a big thing in small city and no one in a big city. But my take on that was, well, I'm ready to go, because that's an opportunity for me to grow in a certain way. So I came to London. I worked for this company for another 2 or 3 years in different positions. They had this idea of moving me through different departments so that I can become more rounded professional. So I traveled a lot, and I never questioned it at all. I thought that this is what life is meant to be. I wasn't particularly happy or unhappy. There wasn't this feeling of, I feel so stuck, because that's all what I knew. And for me, working hard was what I was living for. That was on my radar at the time. But one day, 2011, I wasn't in social media until years later. The way I was consuming information was through books. So I went to this bookstore, and I came across 2010, maybe it was, I came across the book of Tim Ferris, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I don't know even how I picked it up, because of course it's not in my reality at the time. I lived in my own bubble, which was corporate bubble, finance. I was getting better and better, but in my bubble. So kind of in a way I was getting better at playing the game, but I was in one game. I wasn't aware that there were other games out there. And suddenly when I read this book, it gave me, it created huge shift in me, because suddenly my awareness expanded. I was like, what is going on? People live like that. So there are people who are not meant to work 9 to 5, and they don't live this life, and they actually exist. So then I started following Tim Ferris. He had a blog at the time, and he announced an event he was running in California, which was $10,000 event. And he said only 100 people. It's called Opening the Kimono. And I just applied. I felt called to apply at the time. I was like, I don't know what am I doing, but I'm going. And I went, and it wasn't great for my identity. It just didn't feel good, because of course I'm surrounded by these 100 amazing people. And I think I'm something like my identity thinks, wow, at young age, I was a CFO, I was deputy physician, like I'm doing all these cool things. I'm a CFO of a kind of a little entity there, and I'm flying, and I know so many things. And suddenly you go somewhere where, first of all, probably there is no one from corporate or one or two people. Most people are authors. They wrote their own books. They're running their own businesses. Opened my eyes for what's possible and how different the life of these people was versus mine. And I remember he was recording the whole event. It was the only event he ever put together, and that was 2011. And he asked us a question. He said, can you share a brag? I didn't know what the word brag was, believe it or not. So brag about something. Brag, to brag.
Okay, got it.
I didn't know. And what does he mean? So can you imagine, this word wasn't even in my vocabulary. And then everybody had to stand up and say something that they're proud of. And I was like, there is nothing I can say, nothing. So the imposter syndrome like felt multiplied by 1,000. And I feel that this event was blessing in disguise, but at the same time, it really shaked my identity as someone who feels that I'm kind of expert in a certain area, because suddenly I was curious to learn about different type of living, and at the same time, completely not prepared for that. So I took a decision that I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to consult. And by consulting, I will do different. I will be like, instead of being flower in one pot, I'll just be trying different things. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to go back to psychology. But I don't want to do clinical psychology. I would go to coaching. So I kind of went and studied coaching, business coaching for a while, then personal coaching with the Coaching Academy. I studied neuro-linguistic programming. I discovered Tony Robbins. I went to his events. And then I realized that the more I try, the worse it gets. The more I try, to develop myself and become better and set goals. And, goals was not something that I've been taught how to do. Neither it was in my reality at the time at all. So the more I try to put goals and go behind the why and the goals, the worse it gets. So suddenly I was, I left my job. I tried to launch as a coach, working with clients. I just realized that that's not my thing, that's not something I wanted to do. And then I got pregnant. And that was planned, of course. It's not that I got pregnant. We tried for a few years before. But when I got pregnant, I was consulting in a company. Then exactly a few months before I got pregnant, or maybe when I got pregnant, I already worked back in corporate in a big insurance company. And I told myself, if I don't leave now, after I have the baby, I will never leave. Because every time when I leave and I say I'm taking a break and I'm going to launch different thing, it didn't work out. And because it didn't work out, my confidence would go down, and my ability to believe in myself would go down, and I would just do the easiest thing. And the easiest thing, of course, is because I already have people who know me, people who worked with me, was when they call me and say, come and join the team, I just go and join the team. So I knew that I'll keep going there because I haven't burned the bridge yet. And I wasn't willing to burn the bridge because it was too scary. So when I got pregnant and I was working for this big insurance company, I said to myself, that's it. I need to figure this thing out. And mainly because I wanted to breastfeed. Like, I wanted to be this mom that breastfeeds for a long time, that is around my child for longer hours. And my career didn't support that. I would have to be out of the house by 7. I'm
Oh my
back at
gosh.
home 7, 8. You have 28 days off. So I was like, how do I do parenting the way I want to parent with a child that I was 35 when I gave birth? So with a child that I kind of waited for quite some time. So I said, this is priority and I'll figure it out then. And again, I started putting lots of pressure on me. When I was pregnant, I left my job. Basically, in the UK, it's really great because you have 1 year of maternity. So they cannot fire you until the end of the year. And then when it was time for me to come back, I told them that that's it. I'm not coming back. I just chose to stay home. But I remember I was pushing the pram and I was telling myself, I have to figure it out. I have to figure it out. I have to figure it out. And then when Mika was born, I was so much into reading book on consciousness, on book on spirituality, on conscious parenting, parenting from the heart, respectful parenting. That was my field in a way, because it was going back to what I love, psychology. But with the parenting, with the impact on parenting and what kind of a parent I can be. And then I realized you cannot be a conscious parent if you're not a conscious human. So the more I was doing that work, the more I felt called to share it with others. So I launched my YouTube channel. I created a parenting course, which was for baby feeding at the time. I kind of let my interest drives me versus sitting down and deciding I need to figure out what exactly is my business. And then my son started school when he was 3 years old, started nursery. And it wasn't anything that I have imagined it would be, because I thought that I'm this conscious parent that is so careful with language at home. And suddenly I sent him somewhere where they literally closed the door in front of me and they don't share with me how is he settling in. And he had certain behavior. For example, I think he beat a child once and then they escalated it to something very big. And I said to myself, I was complaining a lot to a friend of mine who I knew from many years ago, and she opened her own Montessori preschool. So I chatted with her, but I see it differently, and it should be this way, it should be that way. And she said, well, instead of talking about it, why don't we just open a preschool? I said, right. I mean, that's exactly the way it is. I wouldn't have done it without her. She basically was the accelerator for me to do it together. And then the minute we opened in May 6 years ago, she left probably 2 months later, because she realized that we have different vision. I had the vision of this place being a school like no other, where children are seen for their souls, not exactly business. Plus, it was really far away for her. So she exited, which left me in a place where I had to figure out completely new business, in new industry, right from the beginning. But 6 years later, there we are. That's one part of where I was. And, it gave me so much opportunity to create something starting from my values. What is it I believe in? Why I believe in these things? How I can make this work? Because it's one thing to see it in your imagination. It's very different when you put it in practice. And and then COVID hit 2 years ago. We traveled for quite some time. We took Mika, my son, out of school. We traveled, which meant that I had people running the business. I didn't need to be there. And then we're back now to London. We went to Portugal, as you know. We stayed there for a year. It didn't work out for us. But these 2 years gave me the opportunity to spend quite a lot of time with Mika and also do quite many things that bring me joy, because that was to discover what are the things that basically bring me joy. Because before that, every time when I sit and try to do the work, the inner work, I wasn't even able to answer this question. I wasn't able, because so much of my natural tendency was to please others, or to make sure everybody around me is okay, to give away. And because this part's such a big part of my personality as well, I thought that I feed myself out of it, which was the case, of course, but it was to a higher expense. And only when you have child, and only when you have somebody else who takes priority versus the people around you, you realize how much you've been giving without taking care of yourself first. So it took me time to get there. And then the last year I sat down and when we had this conversation over coffee, I thought that there is something I can give away in the sense of my work in awareness space. I've been doing a lot of, it's been a journey for over 10 years since transitioning from Tony Robbins and the personal development towards more spiritual work. So my teachers are Michael Singer from the Surrender Experiment, the Untitled Chapter, Eckhart Tolle, Don Miguel Ruiz. So these are the books that I go back to over and over and over again. I used to listen to a lot of the YouTube videos from Abraham Hicks and read their work as well. And everything that I've learned, really, I realized that it's all, I can relate to it, but at the same time, it helps me so much. So it gives me the perspective that I've been looking for. So that's how the book was born, 100 Days to More Aware You, which wasn't planned to be a book. It was just me sharing the reflection, observations, and the lessons that helped me from a place of, that's how it was, that's how it is. And maybe you can too sit down and think about what are the beliefs that you hold. Do they serve you well? Do you live from a place of joy? Do you live from a place of hustling? Because whatever we believe, that will become our reality. And unless we are aware, we won't be able to experience the freedom to choose what our reality is. That's why awareness for me is one of the most important, I wouldn't even say skill, because it's not a skill. Awareness is a state of consciousness, but it's kind of our guiding light. The more aware we become, the more freedom we would have to see it as it is, to observe our thoughts, to choose our thoughts differently, to observe our behaviors and patterns, to observe the world around us without judgment and labels. So it gives us the opportunity to see beyond the filter that has been given to us through years of programming and through years of judgment. And it turns us from a victim to a powerful creator, to somebody who owns it. And what a better job than that? What a better work, in the life. I always say, people, if you are to put effort into something, why don't you, if you are attached to the word effort and the desire to work hard, can you work hard towards becoming a more aware you? Because that would pay off hundreds and hundreds times. And yeah, that was a very long
No,
story.
I think
I'm
it
not
was,
sure. Yeah.
honestly, I think it was perfect, because I believe that it will speak to so many people who have gone to that path of personal development and working hard and hustling, that whole world of efforting, right? And it's beautiful that your journey eventually brought you back to your heart, right? To spirituality, because, as we know, right, we are not human beings. We are spiritual consciousness beings having this temporary human experience. So I love that the arc of your story, right? It brings you back home, right? And it's, I think in general, it's eternity, right? And there's no end to the soul's journey of evolution. So I love that it brought you back to almost the beginning. I think the spiritual awakening or journey or evolution, it really starts with you becoming more aware, self-aware, right?
Yeah.
And so I would love it if you would share from your perspective your daily habits or practices or rituals that allow you to increase that muscle of awareness, if you want to look at it that way. Because I think at the end of the day, you can read a million books, but if all the stuff is left as just knowledge and it's not embodied and you don't actually practice it daily, it doesn't actually impact your life, it doesn't affect your life. So I would love to hear your daily practices or rituals or whatever in general your practices for increasing that awareness muscle.
Yeah, that's I love this question, because I would even look now how I'm gonna answer it because my quotidien, my day-to-day life is so different. And only now that we've been back to London, it's been 6 months, less than 6 months, we're kind of getting back into some sort of routine. But my life very rarely would have the opportunity in the last 2.5 years have a consistent routine. I would be all over places because we traveled a lot, because Mika wasn't at school. So basically, I am really good at living from a place of unknown, not knowing what's to come. And because I've been doing it for so long, it doesn't scare me as much, which helps me to become more present. But I'll explain that in a way that maybe it's more useful for the listeners. A lot of people say meditation is what would make you more aware, or go to retreats, go to Vipassana. I personally went to Vipassana. I know you've been to Vipassana as well. For me, it didn't do it. It didn't bring me what I kind of hoped it would bring me. But again, why would you have any expectations? What I do, I don't do meditations. One of my
Can I pause you just to
Yeah.
understand, because I'm just a very curious mind. What was it about the Vipassana experience that didn't work for you?
Kind of everything, to be honest, because I went with the idea, and of course I knew Vipassana from you, from Mimi, from other friends who have been there. And I was at the stage when my son was 3.5, maybe I remember 3 or 4. And when you have a little child, how burned out you are. And I was launching my business at the time, like here in the business. So it was a very, very crazy period of time. And I had something I felt for a while. I couldn't name it at the time. Now I know what it was. I felt trapped, completely trapped in my life, in the sense of, wow, is this all about it? Like you get up and you feed and you do this and you do that. And then for what? So there was this feeling of, not a great feeling of grayness in the whole experience. And I thought, okay, maybe if I push more, if I do more meditation, if I do this, maybe it would help. And when I went, I resented it all the time, to the point of when I literally, in Vipassana, you're not supposed to speak, you're not supposed to talk to anyone, you're not supposed to journal or read books, or you don't have any access. The idea is that I thought originally before I go that it's an opportunity to self-analyze yourself, self-reflect upon yourself, but that wasn't the idea at all. And I understand now why, and that's actually a really good thing, because you can do that forever. But it's just, I thought that it was too hard, and it doesn't need to be that hard. Like for that time, I remember when I was pregnant, and before I got pregnant, I used to go often to a yoga class, which my yoga teacher, who I really, really deeply respected, she was leading 3 times a week in the gym nearby. So I would go, and sometimes literally at the end of the class, I would feel this deep connection to source. Like I almost was like, I cannot describe it, but it's almost like I'm able to plug myself into the electricity out there that you don't see, but it's connected to everything. So I know that it's accessible, and it's accessible via the breathing and the meditation and the yoga that I do, which brings me so much joy. And suddenly I need to go to Vipassana, where through pain, I have to get to the same place. So my mind was, why do I need to make it harder? Because somebody said many, many years ago that exactly 10 days is the time that you need. And that's the way you need to do it, and that you have to effort through it. And I couldn't name it at the time, but the effort through it was the part that, why would I need that if I can get to the same place? Now we can argue whether it's the same place, but I know that it can be the same place through joyful activity versus from the painful activity. So I kind of resented it. Like I remember the last day, everybody, when we were allowed to speak, said, oh, I can't wait to be back. I really look forward to be back. And like, that's it for me. That's not my place. But to be honest and truthful, it literally makes it quieter. Like the mind gets quieter. For me, it was maybe day 6, 7, 8 when it got quieter, because the first 6, 7 days were fighting with it. Like, why does it need to be that hard? But I had the experience, I saw it, and it gave me the opportunity to see the contrast, right? So now I know, now I can appreciate things differently. My sister just went recently. She went a few months ago, and she has different experience. And that's the beauty of it. Everybody would have different experience. So why I'm saying that, because even with the daily rituals and daily journaling or daily practices, that really would depend on where the person is at a certain stage. If somebody is really stuck right now and they feel stuck and they're quite stuck in their mind, maybe what I'm doing is not going to help them. If somebody is in a position where they really enjoy their meditation process and they have, maybe to help, but there are people who believe in discipline and people who believe in hard work, and they're really attached to that story. So if whatever they do needs, of course, they'll have to get results only if it's hard work. Otherwise, that's not going to support their belief. Then probably my routine and rituals won't work. What I personally do is I take time, and it's not every day, especially when it gets busier, but my kind of plant, my thing that helps me is cacao. I discovered cacao in 2020, January. I was in Costa Rica on a mastermind event and we had cacao ceremony and I was the one serving as well at the time. So I actually didn't have the chance to experience what everybody experienced in the cacao ceremony because by the time I had to sit, there was only a little piece left and should have more cacao. And I remember my inner chatter was, again, you're serving everybody, but you're not serving yourself. So that was the inner chatter for a while. And then I said, oh, maybe that's what I meant to be doing here, to serve and make it easier for others. So I take time at least 3 or 4 times a week to have my cacao, and cacao forced me to sit. It forced me before. Now it doesn't force me because I'm so looking forward to it. But before it forced me, and by saying force me, I'm saying it because there was this guilt that now I'm taking time, like an hour and a half to have my cacao and, journal and sit with my own thoughts instead of doing. Now, of course, I know that that's so much more important and it's priority versus the doing, because you basically may skip a lot of the doing. You don't need to be doing these things. Your mind thinks that you have to be doing it because somebody told you that how life goes and it's important for you to be doing things. But it's like literally, as my friend Jess says, it's like moving furniture all day. You can keep moving it, but that's what we humans do, right? Like, I'm just not going to move it here and there, and then next year I'm going to move it from there to here, so that we get busy, so that we think and feel that we are worthier, because through the doing we feel we are worthier. So I take time for cacao. My routine is, of course, when you have a child, it's very much dependent on the child. And when I sit with cacao, I usually journal, or I have specific music, which is drumming music for some reason. That's the same playlist for over 2 years now. I put the music on, and now I'm so much more intuitive, and it's very easy access to my intuition versus before. But before, because I didn't have that with a very strong mind, in order for me to develop this connection with the intuition, I had to go through a period of when I would say, okay, I don't have any answers. I don't know whether my mind is answering or my intuition is answering. Give me visions, or give me like animals. So I would just sit down with the music, very relaxed, drinking my cacao, and I'll see animals. So I see different visions. And then I am reading these visions. I sit down and read it, and oh, now it makes sense. I saw an elephant, or I saw a crocodile, or shaman gave me a snake that I ate. Yeah. So what is it? So kind of decode this to make sure, because my intuition is always sure, but my mind is not, whether the answer is actually the right answer, because what is this right answer anyways? So that's what I do. And one of the practices that I've been doing for quite some time now is to zoom out. So in the midst of something, let's say argument, or of course these things happen, it's like you become more aware. It doesn't mean you're enlightened. You fall asleep so often throughout the day. So you have to wake up, and then you fall asleep, and then you have to wake up. But I zoom it out. Like when I catch myself being very anxious or overwhelmed about something, I'm like, oh, why am I overwhelmed? Because of what happened in the past, or because I don't know how I'm going to resolve this problem or make it work, future. So I'm like, past, future. What's going on right now? I'm in the present moment. I have zero problems in the present moment. And then I tell myself, so yes, but the fear is that how I'm going to do that in the future. And then I said, so now my mind goes straight in the future. And I go back to this connection within that I know that the universe has my back, and I know. So I work on my trust more than anything else. So I have to go back to the present moment and say, oh, I trust. So I zoom back to the present moment. And then if it's something which is kind of a much bigger thing that I'm dealing with, which I have currently on my plate, then what I do is I say, oh, wow, we're all going to die. We are, like, think of it. We're all going to die. And let's say in 40 years, like, I'm lying down about to pass. Would that matter? Like, would I really think about this thing now? So this really helps me. Last year, I lost my uncle. That was the first person I've lost from physical form. And I've never been comfortable with dying and death, which mostly we are not in the Western countries. But it's kind of helped me so much going through the grief and the experience of having someone who I love, who is the first close person who lives, and he was only 60, right? To just remind me, it reminded me so loudly he's 60. It wasn't expected. Things
Mm-hmm.
happen. So I kind of zoom out. I think that this meditation on dying, it's really a great one. It would help a lot of people. If most of the time we think, oh, we're so afraid of dying that it's going to happen to every single one of us. And we're so afraid that we're not living. It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I love that what you shared, every single practice that you shared, the way I see it, has to do with changing your perspective, right? Because I think as human beings, the mind is so like,
Caught up,
we have blinders, right? We're like seeing only like a tiny percentage of reality. And even that's put through a lens. So I love that with all the practices you shared, it has to do with, first of all, connection to self, right? With your cacao, you're creating the space, you're slowing down, right? It's your own version of meditation, right? Meditation is really,
of course.
the way I see it, meditation is just a way for you to connect, to slow down the busy monkey mind doing masculine energy, and just to connect with yourself, with your truth, with your heart. And then from that place, gain clarity. So that's amazing. And then with the practice of presence, which is so much is missed, right? Because the mind, again, is conditioned to future or past, right? So I love that you shared that practice of zooming out. And I like how you said, did you say like zoom back to the present? Because that's an interesting way of looking at it too.
Yeah, it's in a way, I see it from a higher perspective.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
In a way, I'm in a
Zoom
small
back
little discussion that looks very huge right now, like a very big problem. But that's how we live our life, because the mind is attached to drama. No matter what we do, the identity, the ego feeds on drama. We're going to create more and more problems. One problem is resolved, immediately a new one would come. So for me, it's like, oh, remembering that's what my mind is doing right now. And one thing to say, sometimes, at night, because usually for most people, I know that that's going to be the case. Most people feel really worse when they're anxious or overwhelmed in the evenings and at night. So when you get up in the morning, it's kind of a new day, new bright day, whether that's connected to the brain hormones, I don't know. I'm not going to even go there.
I think it's momentum. Momentum, just unless you learn, you know how to stop the momentum, right? It just gets bigger and bigger.
Plus, a lot of people, me for sure, until very recently, and 2-3 years ago, I would make everything possible in the world not to stay with my own thoughts, right? So you keep doing things and you keep engaging yourself, you're putting many things on your plate. And then people like me, I wouldn't be able to go and sit at the beach with the magazine or without the magazine for more than an hour. Like you have to constantly be doing things. And I feel that in the evening, sometimes you cannot stop it. It just comes, the thoughts come. So now what I teach myself to do, and that's part of my practice, and kind of gets much better and better every time. But if there is a feeling of too many things going on and overwhelm, I'm like, how interesting. Let's observe now. Let's observe. I'm trying to do what Michael Singer talks about all the time, which is we have this roommate that talks all the time, this voice in your head, and keeps talking, and let's face reality. Most of the thoughts are not that at all interesting. They're not supportive. They're not exciting. They're not inspiring. Most of our thoughts are repetitive, negative, judgmental. So kind of in a way, okay, they're there. And instead of me trying to change them and getting caught into that, I am looking it from a little bit above. I try to detach. And if there is something painful, like something that I need to go through, which is samskara, they call it in like Vipassana. When you go, they say the minute you sit with something, samskara would show up. It's not the idea to engage with samskara. The idea is to let it go. So if there is a painful moment, instead of engaging with it and creating a bigger story, I see my practice as one of, I can see you now. I'm not engaging with this story. Because the more you engage with the story, the bigger you make it. What you focus on grows, right? We know that what you focus on grows. So do you want to focus on that? And I'm not saying don't pretend it doesn't exist, because of course we have so many samskaras and so many things that have been accumulated throughout the years. It's going to pop up, look at it, but then say, now I see you. That's awareness. Like you bring awareness to the thoughts, to the pattern, to the behavior, to the pain, to the joy, to whatever it is. You bring awareness to it, but you detach from from the idea that you have to describe it or you have to let it make you feel in a certain way. So that's really helpful if people can do such certain type of practices to say, oh, that's my mind. Let me just observe these thoughts. And, stillness speaks. That's I think Eckhart Tolle's new book was Stillness Speaks. That's the title. It's so strong because what I do with Cacao is the same. We are all very powerful in the sense that we have inner guidance system. We have intuition, we have advisors inside of us, and yet we go around and we walk around and we ask everybody around us, what's my purpose and why am I here? And we have to stop doing that if we want to live from a place of connect.
It's a different paradigm, right? I think right now humanity collectively is shifting from this paradigm of looking for a guru externally to coming, just everything is really there, right? This dream, this illusion that we experience as reality is actually not real. We know that. And so the more that, at least in my experience, the more that for me, meditation is very, very valuable tool, because I do have an extremely overactive mind. So when I sit, just literally just slow the body down, right? And I look within, it's like it becomes like a clear surface of a lake, right? The brain waves slow down. It's calm. Like all this up and down and instantly, like you said, right? We have this board of advisors, this inner guidance. Yeah. It's always there. It's literally always there, but just the noise of the mind makes it impossible for us to actually receive it.
Absolutely.
To hear it. So that's how I experience it, the slowing down practices or anything that kind of gets you into the present moment, right? If meditation doesn't work for you, fine. Do anything where you feel like your mind is quiet. Whatever works for you, make sure that your thoughts slow down and you're actually present in this reality, in the here and now, whatever that is for you. And that's when the intuition will speak the loudest, and it's always there.
So, exactly. Otherwise, you'll pick up all the time the signals from other, I call them radio stations, of the people around you, because you haven't put the volume down of everything else so that you can hear yourself louder. And by the way, for a lot of people who are really busy, especially busy parents who are managing so many different things, sometimes moms, they keep saying, I don't have time to do meditation, I have to get up earlier, but every minute of sleep is important. My trick with that is that, after Vipassana, you want like an hour, 2 hours of meditation. I can do walking meditation in the sense of I am washing dishes. And when I wash the dishes, instead of resenting the fact that I'm washing the dishes again, I'm like, what a beautiful opportunity to be really present with washing the dishes instead of with my thoughts. And when I see thoughts that are positive or joyful, I'm happy to engage with those, but I know that it's still a choice to engage with something and I'm labeling it. But when the thoughts are, and they mainly are for most humans, they mainly would have these negative thoughts over and over and over again, judgmental and not nice to you, then I'm like, okay, so I don't need that. I would rather make an effort to replace that or learn to observe it without engaging with it, than engaging with it. And again, it's practice. That's why it's called practice. It's not like bam, done.
No, exactly. I mean, I think that's what it is. Like all this stuff is not about, you don't go to the gym once and expect your body to be toned and sculpted forever, right? It's the same thing with our mind and just with our presence of our spirit. It takes a moment to moment practice. And what you're speaking of is really mindfulness, right? If meditation doesn't work for you, then pretty much mindfulness is like it's a nonstop form of meditation, right? Because with mindfulness, you are aware in every moment. So the more you practice it, in my experience, it's a muscle. It gets easier and easier because you have more circuits in the brain now. So it's easier to go back to that place because it's known, it's familiar. And so again, whatever practice modality, methodology you want to take, I think the message that we're trying to impart is that the slowing down and becoming present, right? Because from that place, if you're not present, instantly you're probably engaged with some conditioning, some story. So you're not in your power, right? You're in a state of reactivity instead of actually responding from a place of alignment and power. So I love this message. We can talk about this forever. I did want to touch, if you had anything else to add, by all means, I love you have so much wisdom to share. If not, we can go in another direction that I think would be so helpful. But yeah, go ahead.
It's just, I would, my message is, we all have identities that we build out throughout the years, right? I always am very careful right now what I put after my I am. So if I used to see myself as someone who was overwhelmed and anxious, like people around me would say, yeah, Didi, you're always like hyper and overwhelmed. Until one day, Mika was maybe 3 or 4, I went to this gym class, and the mom who was there with her child saw me, and she didn't know me, and we chatted a bit, and then the kids became friends. So I invited her to come to my place, and she said, I've been watching you every time when you come to the class, and I watch you now, and you're such a calm person, and you are so, like, the last thing that people say about me is calm person. Like, I thought that it's offensive to tell me I'm a calm person, because of course you're attached to your identity, and my identity feeds me fairly well. And suddenly I was like, how interesting. That's exactly what Eckhart talks about, Eckhart Tolle, because we can choose identities all the time. I mean, my identity is that I'm a kind person, but that's still an identity. Like, sometimes it's good to try different things. So if I can do that, my message to everybody is, if I can switch identity from someone who used to see myself as overwhelmed and anxious and, very much trapped in the mind, to someone who is living from a place of joy and alignment and, unwrapping all these onion peels, then everybody can do it. So I would suggest that it's great for people to start inquiring more. Like, whatever they hear, they see, it doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to start with the crazy change in their lives, but it can be something around, oh, is this true that I believe in? What if it isn't true? What if it isn't true? Oh, I've been hearing that message from my mom 100 times. What if it isn't true? Like, who says that people have to be serious? Otherwise, they're not looked at with, as a good professionals, which is one of the beliefs, right? Be serious, be serious. It's one of the messages you give to children. Come on, be serious. Like, why? Can you be joyful and a little bit? No, because then you're superficial. So it's really about inquiring what you have heard as a message and start there. And then number one, what brings you joy? If you ask yourself this question every day, what brings you joy? There is no way you're not going to find things that help you reconnect with your deeper wisdom in a bigger way. So
absolutely. Absolutely. So spot on. That is exactly, from personal direct experience, was the path as well. Like, really, I think it's Byron Katie, right?
Yeah.
The practice of, is it true, right? If you can do anything for yourself, is give yourself the gift of actually looking and challenging your thoughts, because likely those thoughts come from some form of conditioning, and more times than not, maybe 99% of the time, all conditioning comes from fear, right? Because that's the paradigm of the third dimensional level of consciousness. So as you start, if you're, depending on where you're on the path, if you're at the very beginning, start there, right? Like, just question your own thoughts, and not so much analyze, because that's a bottomless pit, but just, is it true? Like, and just investigate, right? From a place of like, why do I believe that? And then I think you will find so many answers. And yes, the message of joy and playfulness is just coming back to that innocence, right? We don't have to take life seriously or ourselves, and that's the condition of ego, right? It just, it thinks it's so important.
And millennia of programming as well.
Yes, exactly. I think that's what to me, that's what spiritual awakening is about. It's about growing that kind of immature, infantile aspect of the psyche, which is the ego, right? That's what's actually evolving, right? I think the soul knows, the soul has this access to infinite wisdom. It's the actual part of us that makes us human, the identity part of us, the ego, that is going through that evolution and coming to wholeness with spirit. Because I think what we've gone through in this evolution of humanity is coming from a place of ego, right? And kind of feeling or experiencing ourselves as this disembodied human from source. And I feel like what we're going through is just coming back to wholeness. You are not just human. You're a human, you have a body, you have a mind, right? And you have a spirit. So when you merge those three together, you are whole and complete. You actually experience yourself as such, and then everything changes. So if you had anything else to add, by all means. If not, I would love to touch a little bit about parenting, and also with that, we'll piggyback on something else that's connected to that.
Sure, go ahead,
Leila. So with everything that you've kind of the knowledge base you've had, right? What have you learned in the journey of parenthood, and if there's any like major themes or lessons that you could share with people of how to take this work and apply it to parenting, because it can feel overwhelming, right? Like, what is your experience? What was the gift that Mika brought to your life?
Yeah, the biggest gift. I always say in my personal journey, my spiritual awakening and going through what I've been to get where I am at the moment, it's mainly because of Mika. It's only when you have a child, and in my case, I wanted a child for some time. So it was very conscious decision to have a child. I changed everything in the way I see the world, because now I said, okay, even when I got pregnant, I was obsessed with, I'm a house now of this little human body, so I need to eat the best possible way. I meditated every day for 35 minutes. I talked to him when he was in my belly from week 17, because that's when their ears develop. So I would read him the same story. I would meditate, send him light. So it's kind of in a way I knew this child because I spent so many hours, and every day I start saying no to people. Like, he helped me even when he was in the belly, for me now to claim my boundaries, because before I would be, it's so hard to say no, but now I'm pregnant, I can say no. Everybody's okay with that. So even that, it's kind of claiming your own, there are other priorities at the moment. And when a person is on a mission, nothing can stop them, right? So, and my mission was, I don't know whether it would happen, but I can do my part in bringing up, growing a human in my body to the best possible way. So when Mika came, of course, it's nothing like what you'd expect it to be. You don't sleep for years, and I breastfed for 27, 28 months. I would have done probably more. But he just got a little bit too obsessed. And then you question everything. I went through phases when it needs to be said in a certain way because he doesn't need to hear certain words, to arguments with my mother who would bring presents that are not approved by me, from these phases of being so one-way-sided person, seeing things in one way, to realizing that nothing matters, that this all came through me, but he's not my extension. He doesn't come to satisfy my needs. He doesn't come here to be molded into something that I want him to be. But the main realization that I had when he was born was that, oh my God, I'm so limited in my own mind, so limited. Because if I go back to my example with working in corporate, getting better at playing the game, however, not knowing that there are so many other games, we live in little bubbles. And my little bubble can expand, but it can expand only if I put my focus on the things that are different than what my bubble is. In a sense of, I'm in corporate bubble, I get better at it, I read more of this information, I get better and better and better, but I actually don't know that there is a completely new world out there. In the same way, I said my mind is limited. It lives in its own bubble. For example, my mind naturally would think that physics and math is more important than art, because that's how my mom programmed me. I'm giving an example. But naturally, I would think that, math, maybe it's more important. But that's the limitation of my mind. And how can I raise a child without giving him my limitations? That was question number one. How can I raise him in a way that I'm so aware of my limitations that I don't give him any of my stuff? So he can have his own stuff. Of course, you cannot not give them your stuff. They see how you live and all these things, but I want him to question it. So that was one big thing for me when we realized I'm so much more than my mind, and he's so much more than my mind, and he'll have his mind. And it's my job to support his soul coming here and to create favorable environment for his soul versus me insisting and creating my own rules or reality that it's based on how I see the world, because maybe I will limit him. He can see the world differently and he can be my teacher from that perspective. So for me, it was very much about standing back and realizing this child is not my extension. I don't own him, and watch myself in the space with him and when I'm not with him. I had a post, I think, on that in the book, but do you parent differently when you're alone or you parent in the same way? Would you say something to your child if he does something or she does something when you're by yourself, or if you have other people watching you? So, all these things that are like, am I a different person based on the situation? And why am I this different person? So it may be more aware of my inner chatter and my behavior and the way they see the world. And I honestly say that that's mainly because of Mika, because I wanted to become a more conscious parent. And you cannot be a conscious parent if you're not a conscious person again. So how do I become a conscious person? I sit with it, and now I teach Mika. He's 9. He started school after 2 years of unschooling. He started school, and of course he meets a lot of friends, and there are so many opinions, and there are so many things that are told to him that he comes and he say it to me as if it's true, like he would say something, and it's like, it's a fact. Now that's it, it's a fact. And I told him, I am very careful not to preach, not to judge. If he tells me something which is I don't agree personally with it, and I wish that it can be dealt with differently, I literally bite my tongue. I don't say anything. I kind of ask, oh, what do you think about it? Because I want him to keep sharing with me things versus being afraid or being, oh, my mom wouldn't get it. But I told him, one of the things you see right now is that a lot of people would come to you, because that's how life works, and they'll tell you things that they'll think are truth. But you can always inquire in your head, is this true? Is this true? Because some people think differently. And to be honest, for parents who have the opportunity to experience variety, for me, one of the good blessings living in London was that I can explain almost everything through the fact that it's so international. In a way, I taught him that people have different beliefs because people have different beliefs. They grew up in different places. For example, he went with like pink scooter, grade 1 or whatever, before we left London. He went to school with a pink scooter, which I don't know, inherited from someone, or we both, I don't remember. And somebody said, but do you know that pink is a color for girls? And one of the kids at school, right? So it's a child at school at the age of 6 already saying these things. And Mika was walking, oh no, and he was walking with me, and he said, I remember he was 6, and he said, oh, they said that pink is a color for girls. And we buy him a lot of pink stuff. I never wanted any of these things going on in our reality. And they said, oh, how interesting. I asked him back, so where is this child from? I don't know, I think the mom is from Germany, the dad, whatever. And I was like, you see, people in different countries believe different things. How interesting. I never heard. Like, in a way, he now knows that people have so many strange beliefs. And this is a very small thing, but you can apply it for something bigger, for anything bigger.
Yes, I love it. I love that you brought this specific kind of perspective to give them the gift of questioning things, right? And also having the awareness that really, like, whatever that person's belief is, that will be their reality based on that story that they were told, right? It's just, that's it. Like, if you're going to boil anything down, it just is. Beliefs create reality.
Exactly.
Plus, yes.
Plus, another important thing, which I think it can help many parents, is beliefs create reality. So you choose what you want to believe in. I've lost it. There was something I wanted to share. You keep going. I'll share it.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a solid base. If you're going to give your child any gift, is make them aware that your mind is creating your reality, right? You're giving them the gift of power to know that, hey, I have the power to like mold and shape my mind, knowing that whatever belief I choose, it's like magic, right? Whatever belief I choose, I am that powerful that I will create that experience for myself. So I think, like, really, this is like the foundation, I think, for conscious parenting, is giving them that gift of awareness, that gift of power. So thank you.
And not judgment as well. I remember what I wanted to say. It's about contrast, because when you meet so many people with different opinions and different judgments, and that's why I so much love living in diverse environment, because I can not imagine how it would have been if I was in Bulgaria, where it's very the same. But my point is, he sees different things, different contrast, and I always make the point, and it's not the effort because it's effortless right now, but I take the time and the pause to bring his attention to the contrast. Like, if, for example, he tells me, this child told me about this parent or this and that, and it's like a situation, I say, oh, that's the beauty of life, that people have so many different things that they believe in. I always try to kind of guide him to the idea where that's the beauty of life. Imagine if we were all the same. Imagine if, we like the same food.
That is so, I love that. It's such wisdom in that, you are literally removing the judgment from the equation, which leaves you with truth, because from a higher perspective, right? Source it's only the human ego that creates judgment. For source, it's all neutral. There's no good or bad. That's only this third dimensional matrix. So it's such wisdom that you have as a being, as a soul, as a consciousness that you're passing on to Mika. Thank you so much. I mean, for me personally, judgment has been literally that force that caused so much suffering. And it's because of the, conditioning and all of that, that I have been transcending, that I think is such a beautiful, powerful gift that you are shaping his mind to don't even have a concept of judgment. Like, it's just such a gift. It's such a gift. So beautiful.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes, but that's what I try to.
He's going to have his experience, of course. They come here to learn something for their soul, but the fact that he won't have that like instilled in him, right? That's not even a concept that he, you're modeling to him a perception of just beauty, right? Like, look at everything. Oh, how beautiful, how cool, wonder, right? An innocence of wonder. It's so good. I love that you shared that. I love you so much.
Oh,
if you wanted to share anything else about parenting, I think you have so much to share. We could do a whole other episode just on parenting, but yeah, if you wanted to share anything else, by all means.
It's, again, parenting is identity, right? We identify ourselves as a mom or a dad, and it's a huge part of our identity.
We project ourselves, right? Like, they are a reflection of, well, at least I know I did. Like, what they are or how they're behaving is a reflection of me. Like that.
Yes, of course, because they're our children, right? No matter what we do, we still see them. It's not like from source perspective, of course, we love every human in the same way, but to your child, you have responsibility as well, in the sense that you brought them up to this world. I just feel that parents can be really tough on themselves quite often. So if I have an advice, is relax into knowing that it's not only on us. It's not like we are the parents. In a sense, if you listen to a lot of the work of the Abraham Hicks, it's like we are making too big deal of a parenting. Too big deal of, because they come here and they can have their own experiences, and it's great for them to experience contrast, and it's great for them to figure out their own thing, and we cannot shield them from all the negative things in the world. And we tend to be very tough. If the things are not going well, we are tough that, oh, it's my fault, I didn't do it that way. And we would rather detach from this outcome in such a way, you know what I mean? Be conscious as much as we can.
Absolutely. That's the fear, right? That's the conditioned fear part of us. That's the whole path of becoming conscious, is about bringing light to the unconscious programming. And that's still, no matter how much work we're doing, it's still going to be continuing to arise until you fully transcend it. So in closing, I would love to ask you, since you actually have experience of starting a school, because part of my soul mission, I feel like, is to co-create with others who feel a similar deep-rooted passion and desire to create a new way for human beings to be educated. These new souls that are coming in, how do we not screw them up, essentially, right? Because really, their soul is so wise. The way I see it as parents, right? I see parents as just guides. We're just there to create the, like you said, favorable environment, and to create that space of unconditional love and acceptance for them as a being with their light and shadow. And then how can we create an environment that will allow them to reach their fullest potential? Because I think what we have gone through as humanity is we've lived in survival, especially like so many of us in a stress response that I have, like the nervous system is just constantly vigilant. So imagine, right? Like, I love dreaming and kind of tuning into that potential reality of like a world where these, imagine this is, I don't know, however many years from now, and all of our generation has done our work. Now we've brought consciousness to ourselves. Therefore, we are able to create that environment for these new souls that are coming in. So they've come in, they only know unconditional love and acceptance. Now, how do we educate them, right? What do we show them, teach them, guide them through that will allow their soul to reach their full highest potential. This new way, educational system or structure is not the right word, but you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, of course.
If you had a magic wand and you were to create this perfect way that you believe from all of your experience, what do human beings need to know in order to reach their fullest potential and thrive as a soul, right?
Well, for me, education, we can talk for hours about that. Of course, the traditional education system doesn't work at all the way it is now. It has not been updated. It's failing our children, yet our children are in the traditional educational system, no matter that we have different opinion about that. So I tend to see it as a triangle. So I see the child, the environment, and the teacher on each side of the triangle. And the most important, and a lot of this is borrowed from Montessori philosophy. And by saying Montessori philosophy, Montessori herself, she never said that she created philosophy. She says through observation of the children. So basically she was the perfect observer. From observation of the children for years and years and years, I realized that they come with a specific, not children, but all humans. We all come with specific natural tendencies. And from what we know from brain development, of course, and from her observations, and she was a doctor as well, it's very much that children have this absorbent mind between 0 and 6, and they have so-called sensitive periods for certain things to happen. Sensitive periods for language acquisition. That's why they're so quick at acquiring language. I'm not going to talk about Montessori philosophy, but what I'm borrowing from her is this idea that we have to follow the child. Have to, it's a strong word, but if we start with the child in the center and we imagine education having the child in the center, it's not going to look like it is looking like right now. Right now, the education is, this is the curriculum that was built, I don't even know how many years ago, and this is what we are looking for, and these are the subjects that are more important than other subjects, and now let's put everyone at the same age in the same class, and let's give them the same material, no matter whether they're interested in it, ready for it, no matter what. And if you put the child in the center instead of your own agenda as the person who creates the curriculum or the government or the needs of the country at the moment, industrial revolution or whatever it is, then you would construct it in a very different way, because each child is different. We know that. We don't play it that way in the world, but each child comes with a very individual pace that they follow, and they have different inclination towards different things. So if you start,
right, and the way they learn, the way
they learn is completely different for each child. Their children, we are different the way we process information, and yet they're supposed to sit in a classroom with a specific timing, for recess and break, with a specific time when everybody has to eat at the same time, everybody has to go to the bathroom at the same time. It doesn't work. If you put the child and you say, this is the child, and I feel that, and we can talk, it's very different depending on the age group, of course, but let's talk about primary and secondary education, because for teenagers it would be very different as well, right? But even there, the principle should be follow the child. Follow the child means child is different, has different pace. Let's support learning more about the child. Are they more visual, auditory? How do they process information? Where do they get tired? What is their interest? Their interest currently is in, cleaning the water, let's say, if they're older age. So how can we work on a project that can involve them cleaning the water for a certain, creating a filter for a certain tribe somewhere in the world? Like, make it interesting to the child. And children have different interests. Mika, my son right now, he has very deep interest in the Second World War, but it's not something that they study at school. It's not something I'm interested at all. It's like totally not me, but it's his interest. And it's a great opportunity for any teacher, if he goes to a school where the interest of the child is used, to teach him about strategy, about communication, about allies, how people work together, about consequences, about beliefs, about ethics, philosophy. So there's so many opportunities from one topic that the child is interested in, because he's so perceptive. So I think overall education should shift towards personalized, individualized education that follows the interest of the child in an environment. So we have the child, we have the teacher. The teacher I wouldn't call teacher, I would call them guides, because who are they to teach? They would rather coach or guide you, depending on, again, which age you are and what class.
Are facilitators. They're just there.
Facilitator. So if it's a good teacher has to be trained to facilitate, knowing that this child has this spark of interest. That's what they love. That's how they learn, so that they can prepare the environment, the favorable environment for them to support the interest of the child. And then there will be very little teaching needed. Because why would you need to teach them when you supported them with creating the favorable environment to support their interest and whatever they need at certain stage of their development? It's different for each stage. I would remove age groups because, again, that doesn't make sense in real life. You know, it's great to have children between 6 and 9 together, and 10 and 12 together, 15, 18 together. Why would you put them? Because of their age, they have to go through standardized tests and things like that. I would remove all tests that they don't make sense anymore. Everything that requires memorization, or everything that requires just learning something for the sake of learning. I would remove homeworks. I don't think that they're needed, because why would you ask a child to spend time whole day in a classroom where they actually don't really want to spend the time there, and go home, sit down and do another homework?
It's literally torture. Like, just hearing it, it's just torture.
It's torture, but also the children, every human loves learning. We are all wired for learning. We come here so curious.
The things that you're interested in. It doesn't feel like
exactly. But what happens with the current educational system is children start resenting learning. They start resenting reading and writing and math, just because they come home and it's yet another homework and I have to do it and I'm not interested in it and I don't see the point. Because these children are so much more evolved than we are, they actually don't see the point. You have to sell them the point if you want them to do the thing.
Everything is forced, you know, as opposed to that beautiful place of natural inclination to learn. We are wired to learn. It's evolution, like, you know.
I always say that when you go to conferences, right, and to mastermind events or all sorts of events, I'm kind of in the room and I'm like, oh, I really want to go to the bathroom, but I don't want to miss, you know, I want the kids to have the same experience. Why would they have to be, I really want to go to the bathroom because it's so boring here, you know? In a way, it's this freedom that we give them. And I feel that the skills that we teach them are not serving them well either. Because let's put on side the mindset, what you said, being forced and having the need to ask for permission to do certain things, or learning stuff that they're not particularly interested in. All these things basically prepare them then to go and live a life when they leave school, when they go to university, when they start work, knowing that life sucks anyways. You have to do things that you hate, and that's just what life is. I remember the teacher when Mika was grade 1, she said, oh, and let's face it, this is school. It's not supposed to be fun. You know, it's kind of in a way, I'm like, what? It is supposed to be fun. I'm going to learn things just because I really want to learn things. So if we capitalize on personalized, individualized education, which is based on the interest of the child and which works on their soft skills like critical thinking, empathy, collaboration, we change the classroom concept. Classroom shouldn't exist the way they exist. People don't even work anymore in the way they used to work before. So it's very much you collaborate here, then you move there, you work in little teams so that you learn different learning styles and you learn how to make your point through other people, make your point across to other people. And then this focus on academics only versus drama and music and art and sports. For me, each new school has to have, you have the mind, and currently we only feed the mind in the traditional educational system. It's mind, 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 mind. And then people spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands going to therapy to switch off the mind. It's like such a wrong model. Can we just not start with the mind? Have the mind, but use the mind as what it is, this beautiful, beautiful, incredibly good tool to resolve problems, to create, to, you know, imagine things. Don't use the mind for, you know, getting better at things that, or realizing that you should push through things that you don't like anyways. But that's how we teach children from the age of 5. We tell them, I know you don't like it. I know you're not interested in it, but you have to do it because this is life. And then you expect them to know what brings them joy and what
doing, I think, with traditional, like this old school way, right? You are taking this being that's whole, right? Mind, body, spirit. You're severing them from their connection to their body and spirit. Like that's pretty much void in most places. And you're just feeding the intellect. You're just developing this left brain, right? Disconnected from heart, disconnected from spirit. Like, Of course it doesn't work.
Of course it doesn't work.
No wonder we're where we are as humanity, right? It's insane. It's completely insane.
Because the mind tricked us. The mind put us in a situation where we think that the mind is what matters. So in a way, we capitalize on the mind. But each new school should have such a great focus on the body, because it's our house for hundreds of years now, more and more, and on our soul, on our connection with
mind, body, spirit. And in the center is the being, is the whole you, right? Your true, authentic self. It has to incorporate all three. Sorry, it has to incorporate all who you are as a whole, not just one part of you, which is, it's such a paradigm shift, right? And that's what we're going through. Yeah,
I think it's possible. It is possible for sure.
Of course it's possible. I mean, I think this movement has already started. And I think eventually maybe we will all join forces. Like the way I feel guided to start is basically like a mastermind for all of us adults that have gone through our own path and have something to share and add of like, how will we want to build this thing? And we just this mastermind and we figure out this new curriculum, this new way. And then we build these schools all over the world and start this new way of educating humans, right? And I think it goes hand in hand with the parents, the adults, right? Because in order for the child to have that environment, the parent has to kind of be along on the same journey of wholeness, because the parents likely received this type of education, which had severed them from other parts of their being. So this is how I see we are sustainably going to change the world through seeing and viewing ourselves as whole, right? The adults and the children. So good. It's so exciting. It's such a beautiful time to be alive, because we get to be the architects that create this new way of being for humanity, right? That will actually support us in being able to achieve our potential, this literally limitless potential that we are. The power of our mind is limitless. The limit is how far you can imagine things, right? There's no limit. The limit is your belief.
I couldn't agree more. It's limitless. That's why.
There's no ceiling. Don't put a ceiling on what's possible. It's literally pure potential, right? The quantum field is everything that has ever exists there. So that's
why I feel it's so important for us to be surrounded by other people who play the role of the expanders, because again, the more you become aware of the different ways, even the contrast or the different experiences, the more you look for these expanders, the more you normalize it. So it gets easier when you normalize something that we're kind of seeing, but not really yet, because of course our mind would shut us down. We have this big desire about something, and then it's suddenly, yes, but, and then the minute you normalize it, and you find expanders around you and work with these people together, then it gets so much more easier and more joyful, of course, because we are.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? At the end of the day, why are we here? The way I see it is we are here, like you said, right? Why Vipassana didn't work for you is because your soul knows that you were not meant to learn through pain. It was how it was, fine. We played that game
for quite some time.
But now we are remembering that, hey, we can learn through joy. We can learn through play. You're still learning, right? Children are learning, they're having fun. So it's just changing the whole model of how we do this human game, right? And that's why I think it's where we're moving towards. Making the playful mindset but makes life so much more easier, because at the end of the day, we all just want to feel good. Like, let's not complicate things. It's about feeling good. So let's build our whole lifestyle around that. How do I create a favorable environment for myself so that I can feel good in every moment? And when I feel good, I am in the receiving mode. Everything is effortless and easy and graceful, and it's just fun. The journey becomes fun. It doesn't need to be painful. It's just the old model that we've outgrown, frankly, right?
Yeah.
And now we're just like unlearning and just remembering, because really I don't feel like we're learning anything new. It's just remembering,
exactly.
And then teaching your brain like we're just teaching our brain to have these new circuits, because the soul never forgot. It's the human that came into this veiled experience and forgot. So we're the humans remembering, and the soul is there to like do this, create this new habit, right? Like through habituation, change your brain, right? Your neuroplasticity. And that's why I think the universe is so clever that it gave us this gift of this plastic mind that can be changed, your brain, your mind, right? So that's the gift.
And think of it now, when you said that, I thought of the effort, right? The effort. And I think even Michael Singer somewhere, maybe he was the one who said, it's not, you're not becoming more aware through efforting. Not in the same way, but that's the whole message out of it. And I'm thinking, becoming more aware doesn't require effort. Like you become more aware, and suddenly
slow down. Just slow down. Just stop.
And when you become more aware, what requires effort, humans, the mind still thinks requires effort, is when you become more aware, and when you see all these judgments and filters and, you know, looking for different glasses, then the mind gets engaged when starts assessing it or judging it or kind of getting attached to it. But the pure awareness, when you're purely aware, you don't get attached to any of this. You just observe it. So it doesn't require any effort on your side. And my favorite thing is people keep saying the only way to growth is through conflict, or the only way to growth is when you're doing the uncomfortable. And I'm thinking, you know, children, when they grow up, they do a lot of things that are hard for them, like learning to walk and learning to talk. They don't seem being particularly unhappy by making the efforts to walk and talk. It's just because innately they really want to do these things. Like we are pushing ourselves every time when we show up out there in a certain way sometimes, but it's not, it's your chosen heart. It's not hard because you really want to do it. You know, giving birth, it's not fun. It wasn't fun to me to give birth. The process of giving birth of a child wasn't fun at all. But I don't see it that way. It's not a sacrifice, or it's not something hard, just because the end result is so much bigger, right? So my point is, when children are in an environment where they don't feel safe, when they're not comfortable, when they're overwhelmed and anxious, they actually don't learn. Their brains are not going to learn.
Of course, absolutely. You're closed up. You're in survival. Your prefrontal cortex is not even engaged.
That's down. Yeah.
You're in the survival, in the old part of the brain. So yes, I mean, such a good conversation, Didi. Thank you so much for making the time and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. I mean, you could write so many books on these topics that I feel like could really support us as humanity in building and creating, like actively through, because I feel like your gift, you have many gifts, but one of your gifts is this really like, you know how to make things happen, like this masculine energy, like that naturally you have, that you came with, is like, okay, I see the problem, right? I see the solution, and I know how to take the steps to make it happen. So I think that you're just such a gift to humanity that you're here, because through you going through your own journey, naturally you will contribute to, you know, creating this new world that we are all part of, and we're all here to co-create together. So I'm excited to continue to watch your journey unfold. And yeah, like for anyone who wants to get inspired from your stories, definitely get the book. I wish I had it with me to show, if you can show it again. Where can people get your book?
Currently from my webpage, and it's very beautifully done book with the
it's visually, not to mention the content, but it's visually so beautiful. I love the simplicity of having a photo and then the, you know, a piece of your heart, your wisdom, your soul on the other side, and how it goes together so beautifully. So thank you for being you. Thank you,
Leila. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, where can people find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to learn more from you?
By typing my name, Didi Tonev. I have a YouTube channel, which I'm going to go back to right now, but it has quite good content on parenting, if people are interested in that, especially if they're parenting younger kids, toddlers, up to the age of maybe 5-ish. And then it's my webpage where they can get the book as well.
Perfect. We didn't get into your vision for the future, but I think just if anybody connects with what you're sharing, then we can all just watch from the sidelines of what you bringing your vision and your soul gifts to the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Laila. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for doing this work. I appreciate it so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode to the very end. What did you think of this episode? I genuinely want to connect with you, and I want to know what you're taking away from these episodes. If it's fun for you, please take a screenshot of yourself listening to the podcast and share with me over on Instagram, because I would love, love, love to connect with you there. And this is how we can really grow this community, because we are truly all in this together. And if this episode resonated with you in any way, I would be so appreciative if you would share it with your loved ones. Share it with your circle of friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone who you know might be struggling, anyone in your life that you care about and you want to see them happy, healthy, thriving. This podcast is really, truly for me a co-creation, and your support in spreading its mission and message would mean the world to me, and it's instrumental to the success of this podcast. And to me, I define success as the information that's shared is able to serve someone in a transformative, practical, applicable way and actually make a positive impact on someone's life. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, also, if you could, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review or a comment. Reviews and comments are so helpful because they help others to discover the podcast. So whichever platform you're listening on, please take a moment to share your thoughts if you want to support me and this podcast. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening and sharing it with others. Thank you for your comments and your feedback. It makes my day and it truly means the world to me. I look forward to continuing to share incredible, valuable content with you with the intention of bringing more awareness and more light, of transforming lives and transforming the world. Thank you for being you and shining your bright light. The world is truly a better place because you exist. So until next time, stay conscious.